Hi, I'm Eric Mazumpaka. Our next guest's journey started as a humble logger from the rugged landscapes of Agassiz, BC, where hard work and determination were a way of life. His behind-the-scenes role has been nothing short of crucial in shaping the systems and safety measures that today's daring stunt performers rely on. His impact reaches far beyond the silver screen, as he played a vital role in fostering the growth and safety of those who put it all on the line. Please welcome to Stunt Archives, the always safe and repeatable Claude Bouchard.
This is Claude Bouchard, and this is for Stunt Archives.
Mr. Claude Bouchard, how are you doing today?
Well spoken. I'm doing well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm good.
Excellent.
Where'd you grow up?
Believe it or not, I was born in Agassiz in a snowstorm, and it was the last place after growing up here that I thought I would ever want to live. Went to school here, graduated out of Chilliwack High School, but basically an Agassiz kid. And I've been here now probably 45 years.
Did you play any sports growing up?
I grew up on a dairy farm, and your sports was hard work, and but on the other hand, I was 6 when I started driving a tractor when other kids are playing with tractors.
Yeah.
10, I was driving the pickup when other kids are playing with pickups. So, there's advantages. Life skills develop early on a farm.
And so is that where your capacity for engineering kind of started?
Kind of started. We were of the age where we were still clearing land. So when I was old enough to drive the tractor, my father, who was an ex-logger and a high rigger for a crane company, we would go clear land with cables and pulleys and tractors and pull stumps. And like I say, it was an intro, but it just led me into adult life where I became a West Coast logger. So we're dealing with really large equipment, a lot of safety issues. So my industrial rigging background was in the logging industry.
Were there any transferable skills from the logging industry into stunt rigging?
Many. Main one is if you can survive logging, which is about 10 times more dangerous than the stunt work, and still have all your fingers and toes, then you've figured out the main part of stunt rigging, which is safety first. And our motto has always been safe and repeatable. And then sometimes you go, well, maybe we'll adjust a little bit before we repeat this, but it's all down to human performance. Yeah. It's different every single time.
Yeah, so what was the transition into the film industry?
I got a phone call on a Sunday afternoon, and it was a local facilitator for a very bad movie called Klondike Fever, but they needed carpenters, and at the time, partner and I were building our company. We're just starting to get into custom homes and things like that, but then the economy went for crap, and interest rates were up to 18, 21%, so nobody was building. And just, do you want to work on a movie? Sounded really darn good. So I said, well, when do you want to start? And she said, well, like right now. I said, you like tomorrow morning at 7? She said, no, right now. I said, well, this is Sunday afternoon. She says, I know. By the end of that first show, I was walking Angela Dickinson. She's dressed up in its Klondike era garb, and we're going to put her in a Klondike era boat that's built over a rubber raft and float it down the Fraser River. And I'm there with my partner. We're the onset guys to repair the boats for the next cycle, because all the flexing and stuff. They're ready, and they'd roughed out a trail, but it wasn't much of a trail, and she's in her stupid high heels and this Klondike era dress, and she's standing around there looking like that. So I walked over and said, can I help you down to the boat? And she says, well, at least there's one gentleman here. So by the time we got down to the boat, which wasn't far, maybe 50 feet, we knew each other's names and all that. Round 2, she comes back up. And okay, we're ready. Let's go on. Angie, she goes, well, where's Claude? I'm not going anywhere without him. So here I am walking with the star on my arm. And boy, if this is the movies, I'm in. So that was my humble start. Yeah, so I started out in construction. And our third show, my partner and I built the police station set for First Blood. And on First Blood, the film needed greensmen, but there were no greensmen in the film industry. But a friend of ours was flying them around scouting in his helicopter, and they're all talking to each other on their headsets, and they fell in love with the location, which is the canyons on the Othello Canyons just out of Hope. And the producer from the south goes, "Oh, we're going to need a lot of greensmen here." And the local producer said, "Well, we don't really have a greens department here. We just kind of like the set deck or the grips, or somebody will figure things out." And he said, no, we got to move trees. We got to hide tunnel mouths. And so Freddie, the pilot, goes, "You need loggers. Right time of year, their season's coming to an end. How many do you need? These guys can operate the equipment. They can cut down trees." And so the Agassiz Greens Mafia got started there. And they were the beginning of the Greens department. And if you weren't from Agassiz, you never got in. So I switched over to the Greens department, and just through a fluke, the special effects from John Thomas's shop were building a cable crossing across the canyon on a different show. And one of our guys who's an ex-logger that I logged with, he's watching them and goes over to John Thomas and goes, "John, what are you doing?" "Well, we're going to do it like that." I said, "Well, it's not going to work." So the next day, John comes back and says, "How do you know it's not going to work?" He said, "Well, because I've been rigging as a logger for years. I know exactly what you're trying to do. Here's what you got to do to fix it." Like, don't embarrass him in front of his crew or anything like that. So John went back with a solution. And so the next time there was a rigging job, he's going to call somebody who actually can do it and just guide the crew along. And the third time, Dave was busy, so I stepped in, and that started my working relationship with John Thomas. And I'm sure his name has come up many times.
Yeah.
And he set the bar higher than anyone I've ever known for safe and repeatable. And the motto was, there's got to be a way to do this without hurting each other. Yeah. So we carried that through. My first full-time gig was Mantis with J.J. McEnroe, and that's his motto as well. We got to be able to figure out a way to do this without hurting. And the rest just became a bunch of stories. And even after he passed, I had a couple of times when I got a big rig set up, and the hair starts coming up in the back of my neck when I'm thinking about it. I'm going, "Okay, John, what have I missed? What have I missed?" And one time we had a overhead safety rig out in the Seymour watershed on Electra, and we're going to put our actress in, and she's going to run up a special effects tree that's falling. So this is our overhead safety where we can rescue her at any moment. And I went, "That's a big rig. I haven't seen it for a few days." And so I said, "I'm sending out a 100-foot man lift. I want you to go over the whole rig." "Well, Dave went up yesterday and looked at everything." I said, "I know." So it went out there, and Corbin's up in the basket with somebody else, and looking around, he goes, "Guys, do not touch anything. This rig is in imminent danger of collapse." So totally credited to John Thomas. Even after his death, he still influenced through his stressing that if you build a rig, go over and check every nut and bolt. "I just did that, John." "Good. Do it again." And invariably you'd find 2 or 3 scaffold clamps that were loose or something like that. So he set the bar really high, which the whole Vancouver community has benefited from. John Thomas gave me my first here, and it was on the Beachcomber, so that dates it. "I need you to go out there, climb this tree, and rig it up for a kid who's able to climb, and then sets up a little elevator system and a tree house." "Okay." Well, the tree was 26 and a half feet around at 16 feet where we started climbing from. So this is like 10 feet across at the ground level. And it was 105 feet to the first limb. And the first limb was like this. It was a massive fir tree. You kind of didn't mention that part so well. And we left the ground at 9 in the morning, me and an assistant, and got back down at 5:30 in the day. But anyways, that was my first solo.
Your company name was Targ FX. What does that stand for, and has anyone ever altered the name?
When I was incorporating my company, I'm doing the paperwork, and I'm trying to come up with a name. And my dog kept annoying me, and I'm pushing it away. Targ, get out of here. So TARG at the time was the aerial rigging greensman, because I was jumping between camp and camp.
Yeah.
And then not too many years ago, Perry Beckham said, I think it was time we updated your name. I think it's the Ancient Rigging Grump. So,
you and Corbin Fox did a lot of rigging on Cliffhanger. Was that a new set of challenges, having to be in the mountains for a lot of the shooting?
No. We already had done K2, which was a more challenging rigging job than what we did on Cliffhanger. Cliffhanger was different because I came over to do a special rig for the visual effects, who had a 50-foot motion control camera track system that they needed installed at the bottom of a cliff and then at the top of a cliff. So it's all helicopter work, helicopter access, but stuff that we already were actually quite well experienced with. So that's why we had got the job, but we also had the support cranes and stuff all available to fly by helicopter that could service the location once it was set up. So yeah, we would go in early with the mountain safety guys, and we'd be installing our stuff, and they would be doing all their things long before the main crew would show up. But it was a challenging job, nonetheless, a good job. For me, it was a great show. I went over for 2 weeks, and 3.5 months later, my wife came over and said, it's time to come home.
So you rigged on the movie Electra. Yeah, can you tell us a little more about that?
Electra was a challenging rigging show, but I had a great team of co-workers. And again, this is a John Thomas thing. He worked by committee. Guys, I've got this thing. I told him we could do it. I don't have a clue how to do it. You guys got any ideas? Knowing full well that he's already spent 24 hours mulling it over and probably has the solution, but he would pull ideas, and there are no bad ideas. So to the end of my career, it was always, this is my group. They're skilled, they're talented. How would you do it? And I kept learning from my fellow workers right up to the end. Because there's only one way you can think of things to do it, but if you got 10 brains working, it's 10 different ways. And somebody will more than likely have a better idea than I have. So working by committee, and it's more fun.
JJ Macro mentioned that you created a lot of unique and interesting wire gags on Mantis. Any particular that stand out?
Yes. Probably the most challenging, but also the most potentially harmful to Ernest. He's in his wheelchair. There's a counter about 20 feet off to his right, solid counter, and then there's a drop cabinets, solid cabinets from the ceiling, leaving about a 2.5, maybe 3 foot gap. And we had to pull him out of the chair. He had to go flat through that gap, through hard. We had softened the noses a little bit, but if you've been on the wire, you don't want to hit either edge, even if it's soft, and then through the gap. And then use the ratchet to kind of slow him down at the end, because there was no place else to go once you went through that gap. Just basically a wall that was padded and stuff on the floor. So that was, in my mind, the one that stressed me the most memorable. You know, that was the one thing, being my first full-time show, just doing the stunt rigging. Now the push to get it done really quick as possible, which is how it was in the effects world, because you're also doing smoke and fire and whatever else, is that we got to spend enough time to, work through it slowly and build it up until we were, okay, you ready, Ernest? Can you put any more pads on than that? Yeah, so that would have been the highlight.
You spend a lot of time working on Once Upon a Time with Gaston Morrison. Any memorable stunts from the show?
Not Once Upon a Time. It was Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, maybe, or It was a sidebar show. And yes, we were catapulting two performers over the wall. And there was no way to actually rehearse it live. I mean, we did all the bag tests and all of that kind of thing. But you get to that point where you just got to give her. And the effects had done an amazing job of building a catapult that really wasn't a catapult, but that would trail, like they basically had to hold on to handles. And it was slightly catapulted, but they made sure that it stayed with them. And then when it came to its stop, we were already had enough air. But it was one of those self-preservation performances by, I think it was Matt Reimer. And he literally shrunk himself up to clear the wall because we could have used a few more pounds of pressure. But yeah, it was a beautiful piece of work, but tense. Yeah, those are the ones that you go, there's no guarantees here. Once I push the button, you're kind of on your own out there. And they did remarkably well. Chris Link was my assistant on that, and he would arm the ratchet and turn his back to it because he didn't want to watch it. Yeah, that's how confident we were. Yeah.
What's some of your favorite aspects of being a rigger?
It's the challenge of physics, and you compound it with the unexpectedness of the physical performer's body, and their skill levels and their reaction times. And one of the finest self-preservation performers I ever worked with was Laurel Chartrand. He had some moments that I saw that I went, how the heck did you get yourself out of that mess? It's one of those things that once he had an air ram falter coming off a rooftop and it caught its heels on the edge of the roof. The ground crew got the bag in time underneath him because they were expecting him to come way over and makes the landing. And the director said, "That's fantastic." That was a rehearsal. "Let's do that way." And Laurel goes, "Not on your life." And another time was on, it was Eaters of the Dead, but I think they named it 13th Warrior. And he's riding a pony, and David Milray has got another pony to crowd his pony so that it won't veer away from Ken Kersinger, who's the big Viking. They're going to take him off the saddle with a sword. And I have him on a dead man that at impact, he'll go off the back of the chair. And the reason Dave Milray was there, because these are smart ponies. After the first one, he's not going to go anywhere near that big guy. So the stunt coordinator goes, "David, crowd him. Don't let him do that." So he comes off the dead man, pinballs David off the back of his horse. He's end up sitting there on David's pony. And we're going, okay, that's not going to work. I mean, the crew quite appreciated it. Everybody's, rolling on the ground laughing. And so the third time, he comes off. It's beautiful. He's on the ground. And a riderless horse that was never supposed to be anywhere near this comes bolting through, gets tangled up in the wires that he's hooked on. And I see him, all of a sudden, he's going that way behind this horse. And I was able to jump out there, and just the last case scenario, I had my wire cutters in case things went wrong. And I was able to jump on the cable in front of him, kind of like that. And basically, it was touch and go. But that was probably the closest I had to one of my performers being seriously injured.
Tell us about your time in Cuba working on Ek the Tiger.
That was a step back in time. So we went right back to basically caveman rigging, making things work with what we had and what we could get. Special effects was handled by Nick Lawson out of Thomas's shop. And he's a very creative person. He actually made his own candy glass in his hotel room, and because he didn't have any, and things like that. That it was a real challenge, but it was a real pleasure to work on. The crew from India, they were just top notch. And in spite of it all, I think we had one day off in 7 weeks. So we took one of the buses, went out to Veradero, and it rained like crazy. So, anyways, yeah, that was a career highlight.
Any cool gags you remember?
Yeah, we did a crossing, 2-story elevation drop from a high roof to a low roof across a narrow road, not an alley, but a narrow road. And James Michalopoulos was the double. And so it was a combination of hand pulls, because we have to get them off to the side, but on an arc that makes it look believable, and then a descender landing on this lower roof with only 5 pads that we had strung to the side, because that's all we could get. And it was one that we were really glad worked, because there was all sorts of things that could have gone wrong. But James is a star performer. And the second part of that gag is he grabs a handful of electrical telephone cables, which are everywhere there on the rooftops, because it's, just the way they do things.
Yeah.
And then jump over and hook a piece of pipe that's sticking out like a downspout and slither down to the ground. And that was a tricky piece of performing. Dusty was on the descender, and the first time he got caught up in a rail and Dusty caught him, so he wasn't hurt. The second one was flawless. Those would be the 2 main highlights.
What is your role in coordinating with the rest of the stunt team and other crew members on set?
As a stunt rigging coordinator, you start with a script. And then you, okay. Then it gets more interesting, and you discuss amongst yourself and the stunt coordinator and your crew, like, okay, these are some of the gags, but we don't know anything until we go and look at them. So then you go on the survey, and the director will give you his vision, and sometimes you just go, okay, all right. And then they'll say, well, can we do that? I don't know. But let me talk to my guys, and probably within a couple of hours, I can give you a yes or a no. I think we can, and the I don't know that's worked for me every time, because it's just being honest. Don't bullshit. I don't know. If you do know, then you can say, yeah, absolutely, we can do that. But many times, just simply didn't know. Get together with the collective brains that were on the crew, and yeah, we can do it. Then you get back into the building the gag, rehearsing the gag, refining the gag, and then come the day you get your 15 minutes and you're in, you're out. And it's very strange. You get to play and they pay you.
How do you assess the specific requirements for a stunt and determine the best rigging approach?
Okay, first of all, it'd be based on location. Do we have an infrastructure in place? If we're inside the studio, we've got steel works everywhere that we can access. If we're in a freestanding building, we may have to build internal skeletons out of truss and stuff to give us rigging points. So that's the start of it. And often it would be dependent on who the performer was, what their skill level was, what their experience was. So each rig is custom built basically to the need, but also to the performer's abilities. And if done right, that performer's abilities will be enhanced to another level. So there's a lot of coaching goes on, and even experienced performers can develop bad habits. Then you go, I know you've always done it that way, but I sure as heck don't know why. Why don't you just try it like you've never done it before, and when the light comes on, and go, why did I ever do it that way? I don't know. You're the guy. So anyway, so it's being flexible enough to adapt, because sometimes a performer is just not quite there yet. Okay, so how do we make this work? Because you're a perfect photo double. How do we make this work? We had to put a performer up once, and it was in a V-rig, a typical to swivel harness, and do backflips. Once you're on the wire, particularly if you're a gymnast, you have to forget everything you know. You want to do a front flip, you'll never do it on a wire unless you totally rework your actions. Well, the back flip, I watched this kid struggle, and it was, I think, Ernest's show. And he's getting more frustrated, and I said, it can't be that hard. I said, put me in the harness. So I got in the harness, thought about it really hard, and I went, whoo, 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 3 times, almost puked. Couldn't figure out how to stop. And then I said, okay, that's how you do it.
Just give me a minute.
And then the light came on, and we're getting backflips that we needed. But it was the mechanics of your body. And sometimes you have to create that because we can't. We can't wrap you up in, well, we can, but string, but it's visual effects will hate you.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like a really big trust exercise between rigging and the stunts. It's pretty much kind of the same thing, right? Like,
and it's taken years to develop that, and that's what I've tried to impart to my guys, is that a very wise guy, bracket Perry Beckham, one of our riggers, once said, "Every day I'm humbled by how little I actually know." And that is such a perfect motto for the stunt rigging community, that if you become overly self-confident, or even, I hate to say it, but arrogant, which it has happened, that you think you're actually somebody, you're going to get slapped on the side of the head with a mistake quicker than you can imagine. So you go with what your guys are telling you. You go with what your gut tells you. And if the hair stands on the back of your neck, then that's John Thomas going like, "You idiot, didn't you learn anything?" And that happened to me twice, where he saved me twice.
Everyone I've spoken to says you're a very calm and easygoing demeanor. Do you think that helps you dealing with cast?
Oh, I think it really does. And it's something that, it's not just something I developed. This was my persona also when I was logging. And the deal is, if you're tense, your reaction time is slower, your judgment is impaired, and if you're relaxed in your environment, whether it's logging or you got a car coming at you and you're hoping that the riggers are going to get you out of the way in time and all this kind of stuff, you got to be relaxed into it. And the performer, I've always said, you need a plan B. Always have a plan B, an escape plan. And that particularly came to me when I was a tree faller, that you didn't have just one way out, you always had another way out. Personal safety, you've got nobody else there looking out for you. So you take the time when you're building a rig that, if possible, just by quickly pushing a button, you got a plan B. You got a performer, just a straight wire pull, and comes in head first to a landing. That's uncomfortable. Give him a quick pop. Stop him from doing that, and then the floppy down part is usually much easier to manage, because a head landing just sucks.
Do you think it's a fair assessment to regard you as one of the pioneering figures in the field of stunt rigging in British Columbia?
Yes, I do. With the help of some very special people out of John Thomas's shop, Corbin Fox, Perry Beckham, the fabricators, the Dean Lockwood. We spent a lot of time out in the mountains together. Joel Wist, Stuart Bradley, those pioneers, we all worked together. Time Cop John tasked us with a double descender drop off the top of the Marine building, which is a terrible choice for the building because the top of it's all stepped back. So we had a guy come in off the street not much earlier, about maybe 3 weeks earlier, 4 weeks earlier, who just happened to be a Russian engineer. And he came in looking for a job in the warehouse part of Thomas Special Effects, but his English wasn't so good. And so John goes, "Oh, no, I need somebody who could, speak really well on the phone and stuff. What else can you do?" "Well, I am licensed to operate nuclear power plants, and I am a structural engineer." Structural engineer, come on in, let's talk. And so with his help, we designed and built and installed a pretty high-tech dual-track cantilever system that we could pick up the performer on the roof, bring them out over the street, and then drop them down. And so 6 weeks from the time he came through the door, he's standing out in the end of this truss rig above Hastings Street. And I'm taking a picture of him. He goes, "Look at me, 6 weeks in Canada and I'm in the movies."
That's pretty amazing. Like.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But that was the first big one where John just said, "Okay, guys, go at it." And so the team put together, which I still think is one of the finest scaffold structures that I've seen in film. So Mike Mitchell is doing the first center drop, head first, 6 feet off the wall, facing inwards. And the director, Peter Hymas, is up. We have a crane rig for camera, and he's up operating that. So he's up at our work level. And, okay, everybody's ready. Okay, Mitch, you ready? Oh, yeah. Okay. So we have to winch him up, winch him out, position him, lock everything so that now we can do the center drop. But to keep him aligned to the building, somebody had thrown him a rope. It's okay. Cameras are all rolling, Mitch. Okay. Mitch, yeah. You got to let go of the rope. Okay, yeah. Cameras are all rolling, Mitch. Yeah. Mitch, what? Let go of the rope. Yeah. Come on. Mitch, what? Let go of the rope. Oh, let's go of the rope. We pull it out quick. And you hear this, and the director told them to, we're not rolling sound, but just scream on the way down. So you hear this, it comes up, take two. He goes, "Damn it, it's a two-lunger." Yeah. And we got in shit because it was a grip who threw him the rope and the end was all ratty. And John Thomas was furious because it was on the front page of the Vancouver Sun. That every rigger around the world's going to see that and go, "Oh, can the riggers of those?" John, it wasn't us.
Is it true that you helped create the category of stunt rigger we have in BC?
Helped. I would think that Kurt Bond was the originator of that position, and he was senior to me, and him and I did work together many times, and we actually enjoyed each other's company a lot because we're both ex-loggers. So you can never run out of stories to tell when you're with somebody who's had a similar background. Perhaps I helped refine it, the craft, but I certainly didn't do it alone. I always had good people working with me, or like fabricators of the special effects world, and not just Thomas's shop, but every show that I've been on, you're almost always interacting with the special effects world, and you help them out, they help you out, and that's how films should be made.
What are some of the biggest differences you've noticed in just technology in your experience in the film industry?
Electronics assists, like for ratchets, having sequencers. Before you would have like 5 people pushing 5 different buttons. Now one guy pushes the button and the rest is taken care of electronically. Corbin refined descenders from the big bulky 700-pound beast that used to be out there to his titanium one he can put on his shoulder. I can't because I'm not big enough, but he can put on his shoulder and carry it. We got into manufacturing a lot of our own custom equipment, or having had it manufactured, pulleys, simple little things about, running a cable through a wall, through a friendly system, or coming down through a ceiling through a friendly system.
Any messages you'd like to share with future riggers or stunt performers?
Stunt riggers, don't rush your career. Work with as many different coordinators as you can, because we all have a different approach. I know particularly with our crew, and like with Chris Link and all that, the no bad ideas thing was always well promoted. Like, don't be afraid to speak up if you think you've got something to say that might help. Secondly, leave your ego at the door. You come in humble to the crew and to the cast, your performers, because they're the ones that are looking to you as a rigger to keep them safe, but also to make them look good. And just tough to balance it sometimes. Performers, again, spend as much time as you can around the seasoned performers. And I don't know how easy it is anymore, but it used to be a lot of people would come out for free and maybe just help move pads and stuff like that. I think with the liability now, it's probably not as easy. But you need to spend time. You need to see how the whole system works, particularly if you've got a starting out and you want to be either performer or a rigger, or both. There's some people that are good at both. Maybe consider working in a different department as you're starting out, just to see what it's like to be on set, just to see the hierarchy, who's who. And the other thing, I guess, is that the PA with the stop and go sign is as important to the show as I am. So I've always stressed amongst my people is that you treat everybody well. I don't care who it is. That has also, I think, helped me along on my career, is that I respect the people I work with.
And boy, do they respect you.
I hope so.
Yeah, no, very much so. And I can see why. It's been a very short conversation, but man, I would fly off any wire if you were behind it.
I don't know. I might have lost a bit of my skill set here over the last few years.
Why do you think the BC stunt community is so special?
Well, look at the people that are in it. Our world is filled with gifted misfits that don't really belong anywhere else. And I've worked with some, I'm sure they're genius level intellects that if you were just to meet them on the street, you'd go, ooh, what a loser. And then you start talking with them and they're, explaining quantum mechanics to you, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's the people. And it was also a willingness to share, especially in the rigging world, successes and failures, near misses especially. And that's why I think Vancouver is a unique place to make film, because of the collaboration between different departments.
Yeah, it's a great community here.
It's a great community here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
That's what's lacking mainly south of the border, though we have worked with a few rigging folks down there who have shared with us, gosh, guys, don't do this. This just happened. And we've shared back with them. So we have kind of a communal thing going on with some of the guys down there that are working big high-end shows. But for the most part, they don't enjoy the collaborative comradeship that we have up here. We grew up together. We evolved together. And we learned together.